This is your tropical weather update for Saturday, June 18th. This afternoon, much of the Gulf of Mexico, West Atlantic, and deep tropical Atlantic are quiet, although we have a flaring tropical wave in the western Caribbean that we'll take a look at. And of course, we're still monitoring the tropical disturbance near the Gulf of Tehuantepec in the eastern Pacific that will more than likely develop into a tropical depression within the next 24 hours. If upper level winds were a bit lighter across the western Caribbean, we would be monitoring this tropical wave a little bit hotter, but apparently we have a lot of southwest winds here, and also the tropical wave will be moving into the Yucatan Peninsula, so no development is expected. One thing that is certain, however, is that it will be moving into the Bay of Campeche over the next 3 to 4 days, where it will help to lower the sea level pressure a bit. So the Gulf of Mexico, most notably the Southwest Gulf, will be the area to watch over the next 5 to 6 days, but nothing imminent is anticipated. Over in the eastern Pacific, conditions still remain favorable for 92E Invest. That dry air to the north has really halted its movement toward the south, and overall conditions still appear favorable with fairly light upper level winds and a very moist environment. Due to the continued organization of 92E Invest, the National Hurricane Center has increased the probability of development within the next 48 hours to 60%. So now this is officially code red, and they do think that a tropical depression will form within the next 24 to 48 hours. As you can see, little by little, the cyclonic vorticity is increasing in the low levels of the atmosphere. We're seeing that fairly well in the latest visible, and there's also a greater concentration of convection directly over the center today, which is an indication that our system is nearing tropical depression strength. And as we've seen in the overall water vapor imagery, it doesn't look like the dry air coming in from the north is really impeding the system all that much. And it looks like the ventilation and outflow surrounding the storm is not all that bad. If anything, it's restricted ever so slightly to the north, but probably not enough to limit this system from becoming a weak tropical depression or a tropical storm. This was a microwave satellite pass from earlier this morning. Obviously, there's no well-defined center just yet, but that could have also changed just within the last 6 hours, and that will more than likely continue to become more organized over the next 24 hours. Here's the latest look at the moisture profile, and things continue to look favorable south of Mexico, and also at the very end of this animation you can really see our system coming together just to the south of the coast. This is the latest model consensus. As you can see, most of the models take the center just to the south of Acapulco over the next few days, with the final track possibly ending up closer to Manzanillo, Mexico. However, any deviation to the north can change the impacts a little bit. Overall, though, this looks like it's going to be a fairly weak tropical depression or storm if it does develop, and the main threat will be heavy rainfall along the coastal regions. Here are the latest intensity forecasts from the forecast models, and this is from 12 hours out all the way through day 5. As you can see, all the intensity models do strengthen this system to near almost the Category 1 hurricane. Now, if anything, I do believe these models are a bit too aggressive with the intensification of the storm. Right now, as it looks, I would not expect the storm to gain much more strength than about 40 to 50 knots at this current time. Right now, our tropical disturbance is in a fairly favorable environment with light upper-level winds. If anything, there's some slight 10 to 15 knot easterly wind shear on the backside of this favorable upper-level ridge. But a lot of the model guidance is showing that over the next 3 to 5 days, this mid to upper-level ridge will be significantly weakened by an oncoming trough over the western United States, and over time the westerly winds will increase to the south of the Baja Peninsula as our tropical disturbance begins to move more toward the northwest. This is exactly what the 12Z GFS is showing. This is the current time, and as I advance this, you'll see that the model continues to intensify our tropical depression or eventual tropical depression into a tropical storm over the next 24 to 48 hours, possibly finding a peak intensity between 48 to 72 hours. So now this is by early Tuesday morning. This is the midnight time, or 1 a.m., and we see that our storm more than likely maxes out by that time before beginning to weaken as southwest winds increase and some of that moisture gets stretched out from southwest to northeast into inland portions of Mexico. And then, interestingly enough, by the end of this run, much of the moisture associated with the system gets shunted off toward the northeast into the southwest Gulf of Mexico, where sea level pressures have already lowered, and now we have a broad area of low pressure in the southwest Gulf of Mexico that would have to be monitored, although this model solution does not really show much in the way of development right now. Other model guidance would also suggest that the Gulf of Mexico, especially the southwest Gulf, will simply be an area worth keeping a watch on for the foreseeable future, possibly as far as the next 10 days. Not that they're developing any specific area of low pressure, but simply because the area of broad low pressure will just persist down there for so long. This is the current time, and we see our East Pacific storm is going to continue moving westward and eventually out of the picture. And then as that begins to occur, we begin to see a second area of low pressure closer to the Bay of Campeche. And if I play this whole entire run, you'll notice that the low pressure remains in the Bay of Campeche throughout the 10-day period. In fact, you can see this a little bit better on the 850 millibar vorticity, and it actually becomes a little bit more prominent toward the very end of the solution. Now, this is Model Fantasyland getting into days 8 through 10. This is the 10-day forecast, and it actually does have a strengthening area of low pressure down there by day 10. So simply put, any tropical wave that begins to move west into the Gulf of Mexico from the Caribbean will have to be monitored in this type of pattern where there continues to be a broad area of low pressure even without an active storm in the area. The Hydrometeorological Prediction Center is also keeping a close watch on what happens in the Gulf, because that could also bring an increase in rain chances for portions of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. As we can see, this is the 5-day quantitative precipitation forecast, and their gut feeling is that some of that moisture will be drawn toward the north, possibly giving portions of Louisiana as much as 3 inches of rainfall over the next 5 days. So it's safe to say that Gulf Watch 2011 will begin toward the second half of the weekend as this tropical wave begins to move into the western Gulf. We're still not expecting anything in there over the next 5 to 6 days, but overall over the next 1 to 2 weeks the Gulf of Mexico will be the primary area to watch in the Atlantic Basin. In the meantime, it looks like we're still going to have Tropical Storm Beatrice by the end of the weekend or by Monday of next week, and it will more than likely threaten Mexico, but only with the strongest impacts being the potential for heavy rainfall along the immediate coastline. So that's your tropical weather update for this Saturday. Have a good afternoon, and we'll see you again here tomorrow.